Um, Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Starting off, most of the time when people think about ants, one of the first things that they think about is ants visiting their picnics or visiting their homes and eating their foods. Or possibly they think about the fear or pain of being stung by ants. However, something that a lot of people don't realize is the important role that ants play in our ecosystems. So, for example, when they're creating their nests, they're aerating the soil, which is able to help lots of plants have optimal conditions for growing. A lot of them, like harvester ants, are seed dispersers, which is really important, especially in areas that are dry. And they also play a key role in the food chain as they as they are a protein source for a lot of ants or for a lot of other animals. In this talk, I'm going to be talking about two ants. The first one is Lymphithema humile, commonly known as the Argentine ant. This ant comes from South America, primarily from Brazil and from Argentina. They have become one of the world's worst invasive ant species and are now in 6 continents. Here on the right, we could see that they're present in Southern California, um, and they have some behaviors that make them very successful in new environments. One of them being aggression. Here we have a picture of an Argentine ant attacking a much larger red harvester ant. And even though these ants are commonly known for being agricultural and urban pests, they also cause lots of problems with the ecosystem and with humans. One of the ants that they interact with are Forelius pruinicis, commonly known as the high noon ant. This ant is endemic to the southern US and Mexico. These ants are really great at being able to tolerate high temperatures and are successful, and is that there isn't a lot of research being done on the Argentine or on Forelius pruinicis, despite it being a native species. So if we look at Web of Science, a really quick search can show us only 26 results, with 5 of them being published in the last 10 years. Whereas if we were looking at the Argentine ant, we'd be able to see almost 800 results popping up, with 329 coming up in the last 10 years and 10 new ones since the start of 2023 alone. So when I came into this project, I was asking myself how Forelius and Argentine ants were interacting with one another. What I did was for some preliminary trials, I would put my ants into petri dishes and I would line them with insectislip and observe their behavior. Some of this behavior included aggression and grooming. So I asked myself how frequently these behaviors were being done and if the behavior is changing dependent on the number of ants that were involved. In order to do this, sorry. In order to do this, we first collected 2 Forelius pruinicis and 2 Lymphithema humile nests, and we maintained these colonies in the lab. Afterwards, we were conducting behavioral assays that measured their aggression level and the instance of grooming over a 20-minute period for each trial. The way we measured their aggression is by putting them on a scale of 1 to 4, 1 being the lowest, meaning that they were avoiding or not interacting with one another, and 4 being the highest, where they were fighting to the death. We had a total of 3 treatments. In the first treatment, we had 7 Argentine ants versus 7 Forelius. Then for the next, it was 7 versus 3, and lastly, 7 against 1. When we were looking at our aggression results, we found that the likelihood of aggression occurring was decreasing over time. This in part is because of just how aggressive our Argentine ants are, but we also believe that this could have been affected because of the high mortality rate that we were seeing with our Forelius. We were also seeing that the likelihood of aggression was highest when our Argentine ants were outnumbering Forelius. Next, when we were looking at grooming, we saw a similar pattern where the likelihood of grooming occurring was decreasing over time, possibly because our Borrelias were dying. But an interesting thing that we found was that the likelihood of grooming was lowest when Argentine ants were outnumbering Borrelias. One reason this might be is because afterwards I learned that grooming behavior is going to be occurring whether or not an ant is interacting with an ant of the same species or other species. So if a single ant is in a trial with 13 other ants, then it's more likely to groom because it has a higher probability of interacting with other ants. Sorry. In summary, we were able to find that Argentine ants and Borrelias were interacting aggressively with one another, and that Borrelias had high mortality when they were interacting with the Argentine ant, especially seeing that aggression was occurring at the beginning of the trials when the both species were introduced to one another. Next, we found that the grooming tends to be occurring after these interactions, and in the future, we'd want to study if grooming was more prevalent with non-nestmates versus actual nestmates. I'd really like to thank all the people who helped create this project alongside me and helped me along the way. So a big thank you to Dr. Erin Rinkin, my PI, for helping me with the experimental design and the statistics. A really big thank you to Rochelle for teaching me all about ant identification and helping me take pictures of my two ant species. Thank you to David Rankin for helping find all of the nests and taking care of them while in the lab, and Dr. Wyrock and her lab um, for the equipment that I was able to use both for learning ant identification and for taking pictures. And lastly, I'd like to thank UCR Student Engagement for the mini grant that I received to help fund buying some of the materials that I needed in fall of 2022. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?